Good afternoon. This is the Torah on Parashat Emor, this week's Parsha that we read on Shabbat. This Parsha covers many topics, but the main emphasis is the service of the Kohanim, the priests, and certain other laws and the different Yantiv special holy days, such as Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot, as well as the more Yom Narayim. And the Parsha begins with Hashem telling Moshe to speak to the Kohanim, Aaron's sons, and tells them that they cannot contaminate themselves to the dead. In other words, do burial. There's two exceptions. They're going to list a number of close relatives, immediate family, and it then goes on to discuss, and there's one other case, Mace Mitzvah, if there's somebody's found dead and needs to be taken care of and buried and there's nobody else around, then the Kohen, even a Kohen Gadol, would take responsibility for it. And the Kohen Gadol cannot even go for his parents or anybody else. It then goes on to tell that if any Kohen has a blemish, cannot serve in the Beis Hamikdash. That would include various physical types of blemishes. And it goes on to various spiritual impurities and how one has to become purified, and that the holy food is only for the Kohanim and their family in some cases. It talks about various offerings and that the korbanot have to be, sacrifices have to be in perfect condition. It then goes on to discuss the Shabbat and the various Yantivs, and completes and making menorah. Then it talks about somebody who blasphemed Hashem's name, and it ends with what penalty for him, and he also ultimately has to be stoned for doing that. And that's how the Parsha ends. Now, what I would like to emphasize is one of the mitzvahs that appears, in which we're in the midst of right now, and I will read it. It says, Tesvav chapter 23, Is partem lechem machacha b'Shabbat miyom vechem et omer tenufa sheva Shabbatot tamid yachanena ad merachet Shabbat shivis tisbor chamishim yom v'kroven mincha kadasha le'Hashem. And you shall count for yourselves, each of us, from the rest of the day. This is from the tomorrow, the day of rest, which means the first day of Pesach, when you shall bring the Omer of the waving, 7 weeks. They should be complete. Until the morrow of the 7th week, you shall count 50 days. You shall offer Numel Arfein Hashem. That is actually the holiday of Shavuos. We have to purify the giving of which involves the giving of the Torah. And now, last week I spoke about some of the Seder aspects of the counting of the Omer, the Rabbi Akiva's students. This week, I would like to speak about something that's more positive, because what are we doing in these 49 days? We're effectively elevating ourselves. I'm going to go into that in more detail in a minute. We're effectively elevating ourselves to reach a level of purity where we can reach, after 49 days of protecting ourselves. On the 50th day, we'll relive the giving of the Torah. Now, when we say reliving, it's not just we're commemorating ancient events, we're actually as if we are reliving that experience. Now, the question is, it has many significances. I'd like to point out that this 49-50 day concept, as the Rambam points out, it's also going to appear in next week's Parashat Emor, where it talks about there being 6 years when you can grow things, then the 7th year is a Shemitah, where the lands lie to rest, and that's parallel to the beginning of the Tiatos here when it talks about Shabbat. And then later on, it talks about counting 7 sets of 7 years, and the 50th year is the Yovel year. And again, there are connections, what that means and how it connects to what we're speaking about Sfiras Omer, which I will elaborate on next week. In any event, what I would like to do now is I would like to deal with a couple of questions here. First question is, why do we have to wait 49 days to receive the Torah after we left Egypt? Now, what does say, first of all, that you shall bring it for yourselves? You have to count them, because we're talking about going from spiritual impurity to impurity. The Jewish people in Egypt have been steeped in years of immorality and Tumah and idol worship of the Egyptians, with the exception of the Levium, from whom the Kohanim descend. And despite that, we see that we have to purify ourselves. Now, the Or HaChaim makes a reference that, based on the Zohar, and they wish to join with the Hashem, and then with the nation, which to join with the nation, so to speak, like a bride, he in Matt, through this giving of the Torah, like it's analogizing to a bride, a chuppah with a chassan and bride, husband and wife to be. And there's an interesting question there. Why 49 days? Because when there's other spiritual impurity, such as Nida, Zav and Zava, different types of spiritual impurity in man and woman, one counts 7 days, clean days, pure days when there's no more discharges, and then they immerse. Why 49 days, first of all? And it's explained that we were so steeped in the impurity of the Egyptians, it took 49 days to purify ourselves. Also, if you look on a deeper level, in a lot of the Omer charts, as first Omer charts, it says that there's different midos you're supposed to work on. There's 7 different midos, starting with Chesed and working to, at the end, Malchus. And these 7 are 7 of the qualities with which Hashem created the world. They talk about 10 spheros. It's a very complicated sugya and a topic in itself. In any event, why the concept of chassan and kala, bride and groom, actually in this case, groom and bride, Hebrew. Why discuss it? To look at that, the Orachaim doesn't explain this. Look to the Bnei Yissaschar, and he explains based on a Gemara that there is a Gemara that says 40 days before a child is conceived, there's a heavenly voice proclaims in heaven that so-and-so, the boy will marry so-and-so, the girl, later on, he'll marry, and be married. Now, here, what marriage are we talking about? We're talking about, so what's being proclaimed 40 days before creation, which, by the way, in a normal year, it's going from Tu B'Shvat to the 25th of Adar, not this year because leap year, which is 40 days before, and that's the beginning of the creation of the world, and the whole universe was created for Israel, ultimately, and that's one thing. And so what was being announced? It was announced who was the chassan, so to speak, and who was the kala, who was the future bride and groom and bride. It's explained again through receiving us, accepting Torah and Hashem, giving us the Torah. We're Torah is like we're talking about Hashem having a special relationship with the people, Knesset Israel, who represents the color here. Now, this is meant in a spiritual sense, not in a literal sense, obviously. And there's a, so that's one understanding. Now, there's a big question on this, which the Orachaim raises. That's very good for the first, when we went out of Egypt. Now, why don't we start counting on the first day of night of Pesach? We only count starting the second night of Pesach because we had to be pure on the actual day of Pesach. Part of that day, that night and day of the original Pesach was spent in Mitzrayim, so we couldn't count that as a day of purification. However, having said that, that's all very nice. It explains the first year until Matan Torah. But why do we do it every year? We're not going in and out of Egypt every year, even though we're supposed to relive the Exodus. Now, one understanding of that is the word when it says Sefratem, you shall count. I'm going Derek Remez, the Orachaim brings. You shall count for yourselves. Count for yourselves. Now, what do they say? This is Shabbos 105b, Masechta Shabbos Shla, and other sources, because it says the Neshimos Am Israel Haim Bechinas Lukot. Souls of the people of Israel are like the Lukos, the two tablets which were brought down. And it's explained, as the Shla explains, there's 5 commands on each Lukos, corresponding to 5 fingers on each hand. And what did this neshama of a person corresponds to the letters inscribed in the Lukos. Now, having said that, it's explained in Midrashim that the Lukos were made of Sifa Ranon, Sifa Rion, which is a luminous stone. Some translate it loosely as sapphire. And anyway, so in the following years, including right now to this year, we each one of us purifies ourselves with various, not following mitzvahs, doing a chas v'sholom averos, God forbid, We have to polish up those tablets, and by taking the 49 days, figuring out what we need to work on, and actually working on it, we are cleaning those lucos, so we're again ready to receive the Torah. Now that, however, raises yet another question. We only received the Torah once. What is this thing what are we doing? This is a commemoration of a holiday. We say specifically no, because as pointed out by Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Haver, we don't have a circular record of time like the nations, where it is a solar calendar. We go back 365 days and wind up in the same place. It's different. We are effectively reliving those experiences. Now, what does it mean that we're reliving those experiences? We said that about Pesach also. It means that each time of the year has a very special quality, which comes back each and every year, so that we can work on ourselves. Because the process of purification and the giving of the Torah reoccurs. Now, to understand this and what the Orach Chaim is saying, I'm also going to be referring to what he says in Parashat Bereshit. Whatever spiritual forces were on the original day, Matan Torah, or the events of Exodus or whatever, literally are reawakened and actually give us the chance to purify ourselves. On a more subtle level, the tumor impurities we're facing are of a different nature. So then we're again ready to receive the Torah, because we get so to speak, a refill of our Torah learning for the coming year. And we're able to merit getting the Torah by purifying ourselves in these weeks. Now, that's the next level. What does that mean on a deeper level? The Orach Chaim also explains that the same process will go on each year in accordance with the secret wisdom of Hashem. Now, what does this mean? To look at that, we have to go to Sefer Bereshit. In the beginning of the second parsha, parak of Parashat Bereshit, of Sefer Bereshit, it has the famous line which we say every Shabbat Kiddush, Friday night. V'yikel Elohim et b'yom hashvi malchuso asher asa seh v'yishpos b'yom hashvi b'mekol malachto asher asa. And it translates to, on the seventh day, Hashem completed his work, which he had done, and he abstained from the seventh day from all the work which he had done. Now, there's a contradiction here, because on one hand, it sounds like he abstained from work. On the other hand, it sounds like he completed the work. Now, as is explained in Zohar, various places, and also explained in the Orach Chaim, there's a different process going here, because each one of the first 6 days of creation had a special quality. One was creating light and darkness.
give you an example of it. They were creating the birds and the ocean-bound creatures and sea-bound, water-bound creatures. And on the sixth day, we're creating animals, and fourth day we created other things. Each one of these days was not just created for that first week, but was going to continue those creations for every subsequent week. So what was created on Shabbat? What was created on Shabbat was the Shabbat itself. Now, what does that mean? It means that that day is a renewal. The first 6 days of existence was by Hashem's chesed and rachamim, kindness and mercy, because he had to maintain each one of those. On the seventh day, by his creation, the seventh day, he gave them the energy, he gave the following weeks the energy, spiritual creators, forces, to maintain the world for the next 6 days. However, each one of these days, in a sense, we're reliving that experience, the world. Now, let's look at the word Baikulu. The word Baikulu, and briefly explain, is a very detailed explanation. Briefly explain, Baikulu Bayuchal. He completed his work. Bayuchal. And then the seventh day Hashem completed. Okay? He completed his work. And besides the fact he maintained for the world, a continuation of the world, he also created, he loved his creatures, and he desired his creatures, and as the Orach Chaim explains in the Zohars, all of the world desired Hashem, and Hashem desired to be involved with his creatures. And it says, Hashem, as it says in Yeshayahu, Hashem's presence fills the world, and in other words, his presence, his aura, is everywhere. We're all within his aura, and Hashem is among us, and we're with him. And therefore, we're included within his light, and we're connected to him. And therefore, Hashem created that world so every creation can feel a connection to Hashem, because they desire that closeness, and that includes human beings. They desire that closeness to Hashem, and Hashem also wants to be connected to his creations. And in fact, there's a number of verses quoted, but the one I'm going to quote in this explanation is from Tehillim, Psalms. V'nispa gam kalasa nefesh atzura Hashem lebi basi v'reinu el chai. My soul yearns, yes, it pines for the courts of the Lord. My heart and flesh pray reverently to the living God. So what it's talking about here is Vayachal, to complete, is connected to the word kalasa, kalata, to desire, to yearn for Hashem, and Hashem yearns for us. And so he created that in the 7 days, but he not only created that, as he creates his Torah, it goes deeper than that. because what does he do also? That applies to all times of the year. He wants to be closest to us and he wants us to be close to him. Is those every time of the year, just like he does with the 7 days of creation, he also does with all the different times of the year. So they're being recreated. There's a closeness, just like he did with the Shabbos. And in this time of year, we're getting ready for Matan Torah, and we're getting ready to purify ourselves for that. And I wish us that give us all a bracha, not only for a wonderful Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom, but that we utilize this time, truly fulfill this potential, so they will get another year of closeness to Hashem on Shavuos and His Torah. And again, good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.